Good afternoon. Day 5 of Stage 4 load shedding. The Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan and the Eskom board still seem to be in the dark, though, on solutions. Now they're pleading with South Africans to be patient, as updates will be available only in the next fortnight. Let's begin our coverage post that big news briefing this morning. ENCA's Eldrin Sampier is following that story. Eldrin, good afternoon to you. The impression that one got was that there was mass confusion. There was no real answer as to when this is going to stop, and I think the Public Enterprises Minister used the words no magic formula.
Well, certainly no magic formula, but what that means for you and I, and as well as our viewers, is that over the next few days we will remain in the dark, as you've indicated in that intro as well, that we could only know over the next 14 days, by the end of the next 14 days, as to where South Africa sits with regards to the electricity crisis and what other mechanisms the power utility can bring on board to help us out of this situation. But also remember that initially government had said, as well as Eskom had said, that load shedding will come to an end by April at least. But seemingly with these problems that we are facing now at the moment, including the diesel shortages, which now we understand will only arrive on Thursday instead of today, it means that we will continue with this crisis, and this crisis will persist over the next few days until we get an update from government as well as Eskom.
And in the next 14 days, then, Eldrin, absolutely critical that there is a focus on maintenance and particularly reference made in that news conference today about a lack of maintenance. But the problem is, we've known this for a long time, haven't we?
Well, certainly it's nothing new, and this is one of the questions that I put to the chairperson of Eskom as well, that when we spoke to the former Eskom CEO, Brian Molefe, he insisted that during his tenure they ensured that they don't compromise the maintenance budget rather, and to make sure that there is routine maintenance using a system what they called Tetris. Not too sure whether that system is still being used. However, though, Hadebe, in his response and adding to what Mabuza had to say, this is now the CEO, said that over the few years, we have seen that there has been a decline in the maintenance budget, and that's why Eskom finds itself where it is at the moment, because as well of the aging infrastructure. But will Eskom ever have enough money to ensure that maintenance is kept up to speed and there is routine maintenance? Hadebe is saying that they have budgeted, I think, about 50 billion rand or 40 billion rand over the next 5 years to ensure that there is money for this routine maintenance. It's
also made to the average age of power stations being 37 years old. I think the notion or the question of independent power producers was also raised.
Yes, and that is a very, very critical issue. Remember that some of the stakeholders, especially the unions, are opposed to Eskom using these IPPs. As it stands at the moment, Eskom spends or buy per kilowatt. They buy per kilowatt, I think it's 2.22 rand, and then they sell it to you and I at 89 cents. So certainly Eskom is making a loss. And then on the other side as well, you have you have the diesel that's being used as well. The diesel that's being used, diesel costing Eskom just over 3 rand per kilowatt, while you and I, again, we're only paying 89 cents. And Eskom is saying that this is indeed a problem, but whether they'll be able to fix it over the next couple of years, that's the big question. Eskom is saying that when you look at the price of renewable energy, at least that they're getting from the IPPs, that price is declining, and they hope that the price will continue to decline over the next few years. There was also reference that was made around the tariff that you and I are currently paying, and Jabu Mabuza saying that it's not adequate. And we know that on April the 1st, the electricity price will increase by 13.8%.
I want to line up some tape in just a moment. Eldrin, Jabu Mabuza, who is the chairperson of Eskom, we'll get to that in just a moment. But before that, two other issues which I think we need to touch on were questions asked about how close we are or could be to a grid collapse. And the second question was the word sabotage mentioned?
Well, the first question around the issue around whether the national grid would collapse, the answer from the minister was that we'll tell you when we get closer to that point. But as it stands at the moment, we are not there as yet. But certainly, if these issues do continue, and if you have any of the other power stations probably might collapse. And there's another issue that was raised by the COO, for instance, who said that previously they had a company that used to maintain all these boilers, which have now leaked, which has also led to the load shedding, and that company is not there anymore. So what happens in a case where you have, again, a coincidence where you have more than four boilers, excuse me, where you have more than 4 boilers that collapse and cannot provide enough power to the national grid. The issue around sabotage, remember that last year as well, there was this issue around sabotage that was mentioned by the minister when the Eskom workers went on a strike. The minister is saying today that the investigations are still continuing. But remember that earlier this year as well, just after the State of the Nation address, there was also this issue of sabotage after the president has made the announcement of the unbundling of Eskom, and all of a sudden we started experiencing sabotage. And Zizikoto, who speaks for the president of the ANC, said that all indications are that there is sabotage behind this, but we still don't know who these saboteurs are. These saboteurs still remain faceless, at least as it seems now, and we still remain in the dark with regards to that and who will be held accountable.
All right, Eldrin Sampier, we'll Uber you a bottle of water. Thank you very much indeed. Live from that press briefing conducted by the chairperson of Eskom, Jabu Mambuza, and the Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan. In just a moment, we're going to reflect on how this crisis is affecting the countries beyond our borders, but I think we can play you a little bit of Jabu Mambuza, the chairperson of Eskom, at that news briefing a little earlier today.
The Eskom problems as we see them, they structural, they operational, and they financial. We have spent some time, and I think in trying to address what we called the cleaning up. But what is now has become clear is the cleaning up was a consequence of some malfeasance of people having stolen money. This was not money that was sitting in a vault somewhere at Eskom that they open the vault and take. It now becomes clear when you hear that the average life of the Eskom plant is 38 years. It's clear looking in the financials that for the last 5 years in particular, up to February 2018, there's been maintenance in a reduction sense. The maintenance spend was getting less and less, which is incongruent with the plant that was aging more and more. So it has to be that money that was not spent on maintenance. The question has to be, what was that money spent on? So that is an issue that is currently now being pursued through the law enforcement agencies, either on a criminal process or on civil processes. That is the one side. But the reality is we now have a plant that is falling off owing to not maintenance.
All right, in just a moment we're going to focus on how this load shedding crisis is impacting on small business. But before we get there, whenever South Africans experience power cuts, Eskom comes under criticism for the sale of electricity to other SADC countries. So important to ask, I think, what exactly is the relationship between those countries when it comes to the sale of electricity from South Africa? Ian says Michael Apple has developed a couple of slides for us, and we're going to talk about that now. And it's not obviously just a South African problem.
No, the relationship between the SADC region and Eskom is complex and it's intricate. There are a number of power supply agreements. Let's just show the viewers the very first slide, which shows you who exactly we supply. It's a whole host of countries in the SADC region. There are 7, and obviously South Africa being the 8th. And if we move on to the next slide, we do, of course, sell to our neighbours. There is an economic incentive in Eskom, which is definitely the biggest power producer in the region. And you can see the reliance, especially in Zimbabwe, over the last, say, 6 years, how it's gone from 154 gigawatt hours to 2,250 gigawatt hours just last year.
And this is money, Michael, that is crucial to the coffers of Eskom, which is on the ropes.
That's correct. So we need to keep selling to them. And we're going to get to a slide in a second to show that this is not a sustainable business model. If we can move on to the next slide. This is the all-important question. Are South Africans feeling the hurt while our neighbours in Botswana, Namibia, Zambia, Mozambique are not being load shed or not being given excess electricity? There are two countries within our borders, Swaziland and Lesotho, that are being proportionately load shed, as South Africans are. The others, and this is what I've been told by energy experts, I'm yet to get a definite answer out of Eskom, whether or not we are indeed selling them any electricity at the moment as we speak. I have gone onto NAM Power's website. They have a live feed there of how much electricity is coming in from where. 203 megawatts coming from Eskom. So it would appear that Namibia is still receiving energy from South Africa. If we can move on to the next slide. We primarily import from Mozambique, a country we know has been decimated, and there are two power lines that are down there related to Kohora Bass. It's 1,500 megawatts daily that we get from them. And then moving forward to the next slide, this is an important question. The customers that Eskom is going to have in the future, if you look at the hydroelectric potential for Zambia, Mozambique, and the DRC, especially DRC, 20,000 megawatts that is expected to come online after 2025. These are customers that in the short to medium term are not going to require electricity from Eskom. So Ted Blum, an energy analyst, saying that if Eskom looks to sell its way out of its financial problems, it's simply not viable.
Just a quick one. It does beg the question, if we are in such a powerless position right now, why we simply don't stop. And I think it's an obvious answer.
I think that these agreements have got certain penalty clauses in place that we simply cannot leave people that we are contractually bound to in the dark. I think they're going to experience some real punitive consequences if Eskom does that to our neighbours.
All right, Michael Apple, thank you very much indeed. Looking at the bigger picture as far as SADC is concerned. Now, I want to focus this on consequence. And water taps, particularly here in Gauteng, could start running dry as stage 4 load shedding continues. ENCA's Kailihle Khumalo is in Ekurhuleni to give us a sense of what sort of impact we're looking at. And Kailihle, good afternoon to you. Ekurhuleni says once we reach stage 4, this could have a dire impact on pumps in the area. Explain that to me.
Well, essentially, Jeremy, just a short while ago, we got an opportunity of speaking to the head of energy right in the city. So also, this is the country's manufacturing hub, Ekurhuleni, contributing significantly to the GDP. So the head of energy, simply put, said, once we reach stage 4 of load shedding, that's when they cannot guarantee even the water pumps. So that's when they target such points. So some of the areas that have just been affected by this particular issue now is an area like Germiston North. So we can confirm that the city has confirmed that at such area, that's when we're seeing very dire consequences.
Just very quickly, do we know approximately how many people might be affected by this?
Well, at this point, Jeremy, we're still just awaiting for the numbers, but the city is really trying to work so hard in trying to minimize the impact. We know that the city just needs about 2,000 megawatts to make sure that they stay stable. But in terms of the number, we're still awaiting for the official exact number as to whether it's few hundreds or thousand, or it could just be a massive number.
All right, let's break away from day 5 of stage 4 load shedding. Kailihle Khumalo, thank you.